Hello, everyone. I want to welcome you to the Lincoln Library of the Waldorf Astoria. Isn't this a beautiful place to be? Hello, beautiful place to be. We're going to rev up this audience. We better get some more coffee in here. I am Mickey Ibarra, founder and chairman of the Latino Leaders Network, dedicated to bringing leaders together. Look at these leaders. Since 2004. On behalf of our board of directors, welcome to this inaugural in-person event of the Cafecito series, a platform created to present the Rising Star Award. Please join me in welcoming our honoree, Carlos Mark Vera, and his family who is with him. Where's Carlos? Where is Carlos? Okay, let's give him a grand entrance. I mean, this is a big deal. He's receiving the award. His parents, by the way, Maria and Herman, and his sister Nicole, is kind of a surprise that they're here. Would you please stand up and be acknowledged? Maria, Herman, and Nicole. Okay, and Carlos has found the time to join us. Walk right through this center aisle right here. Thank you. Thank you, Carlos. The Cafecito series joins our two long-standing signature events, the Tribute to Mayors and the Latino Leaders Luncheon series, dedicated to bringing leaders together to share our personal stories of obstacles overcome to achieve success and to celebrate Latino leadership. Next year, the Latino Leaders Network will mark its 20th anniversary, having convened 108 events. And we will be stronger than ever, having launched this Cafecito series to engage a new generation of leaders. Your experience is so important to the future of our community, our country. Before presenting the program host, however, I also want to welcome and thank Ruben Barales of Wells Fargo, the premier sponsor of the Cafecito series when it launched. When we launched virtually, in fact, many of you may have engaged with us first virtually during several years we'd all like to forget. But Ruben was there with Wells Fargo, and he's here again. He actually suggested, why don't we do this in person? Those of you that know me well understand I don't think I've had an original idea in my life. And this is no exception. And so we're delighted to be here, and Ruben not only suggested that we do it in person, but also agreed to be our premier sponsor. Thank you, Ruben. No, you're not yet. We're going to give you a chance here. Two other acknowledgments I want to make before I do present our host is to SEMA Strategies, both Jennifer Arce as well as Elia Quintana. They both were engaged to assist us in putting this event together, and I'm delighted to have them as a part of our team. We also are joined by an elected official, a Afro-Latino, a delegate of the Maryland legislature, Ashanti Martinez. Ashanti, where are you? Right here. A Puerto Riqueño. Thank you for being with us. I see now he's vanished, but I know he's here somewhere. Antonio Tiarino. Maybe he walked out too. It's now my pleasure to present Gina Donner, who is a key member of the Latino Leaders Network leadership team, both in Washington as well as Los Angeles. Gina started in 2017 after completing a LULAC internship. Now, having hired literally hundreds in my 47-year professional career, including hiring at the White House, Gina is absolutely one of my best hiring decisions. And now I'm proud to present Gina, today's host of our program. Gina?
Wow, thank you, Mickey, for the very kind introduction. And hello, everyone. I'm honored to be your host today. Welcome to the first ever in-person Cafecito series, our new platform designed to educate, inspire, and prepare the next generation of leaders. As Mickey mentioned, I came to Washington, D.C. 7 years ago for an internship program through the University of California, where I interned for LULAC. During my time there, I learned the immense value of networking and cultivating meaningful relationships. It was through the power of networking and a little bit of luck that I landed my first position at the Ibarra strategy group as an office assistant. And through hard work, determination, and initiative, I was quickly promoted from office assistant to senior associate, and then from coordinator to director at the Latino Leaders Network. I was fortunate enough to manage an internship program for the Latino Leaders Network, where I found myself becoming a mentor for many interns, including Enrique Sanchez in the front row, who still volunteers for the Latino Leaders Network several times a year. One piece of advice that I consistently share was the simple yet profound wisdom of showing up, a cherished Mickeyism that resonates deeply. Showing up is important because it allows us to actively participate in life, seize opportunities, and make meaningful connections with others. So thank you all for showing up today, especially the interns, students, and fellows. Now it brings me great pleasure to present Ruben Perales, Senior Vice President of External Affairs with Wells Fargo, for premier sponsor remarks. Welcome, Ruben. We appreciate your support.
Finally! Hey, I've been wanting to come up here and say hello to everybody. I'm so excited. I'm so proud that Wells Fargo is able to partner with Mickey and Latino Leaders Network to do the Cafecito. And you all look much better in person than in those little squares. So I'm so glad we're doing this in person. I just, Jana's advice was absolutely right. Just show up. Being here, network with folks who are in your cohort, your ages, but also with old people like me and Mickey. Yes, you're welcome, Mickey. But, because we want to see you be successful. And the only way we can do that is we know who you are and understand what you're interested in. And so making those connections is so important for you. Just keep that in mind. That's one thing I'm really excited about this event, is that we're really focused for you on the next generation. So take advantage of it. So I just want to mention how things change. Some of you might not be aware, but the U.S. Black Chamber is meeting in the ballroom across the hotel here. Latino Leaders Network is meeting right here. This used to be the Trump Hotel. Boy, how times changed. And I think it's just a reflection. I think it's just a reflection of the reality that, and I'm so proud to work at Wells Fargo, a place where we understand, America is becoming more and more diverse, and we need to help diverse young people take on leadership position in our country, in the private sector, in the nonprofit sector. So we're looking to you in the great things that you're going to be able to do. So I'm so proud to be a part of this. So Mickey, thank you for letting Wells Fargo be a part of it. Thank you all for participating. And it's a blast listening to Chuck Rocha. So you're going to have a great time. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ruben. And thank you to Southwest Airlines, the official airline of the Latino Leaders Network, as well as PG&E, our book sponsor. Now I am proud to re-present Chairman Mickey Ibarra of the Latino Leaders Network, our champion and my personal mentor, for the presentation of the Rising Star Award.
Carlos Mark Vera, an immigrant from Colombia, was raised in California before moving to Washington, D.C. to attend American University. While at AU, Carlos was an unpaid intern at the White House and the U.S. House of Representatives and more. He knows firsthand the struggles of trying to survive while interning without compensation. Under his leadership, Pay Our Interns successfully convinced Congress to pass more than $150 million in funding for interns in congressional offices, the State Department, and the White House. How many interns we have here from the White House, the Hill, or the State Department? The next time you go to the bank, thank this guy right here. He has also helped nonprofits, corporations, as well as presidential campaigns with their internship programs. In no small measure, his efforts on Capitol Hill resulted in Carlos being named as a Forbes 30 Under 30 honoree, Echoing Green Fellow, Camelback Ventures Fellow, a top 20 change maker of NBC Latino, and an Aspen Ideas Fellow. A former college dropout, Carlos went back to school and graduated in May of 2020 with a bachelor's in political science from American University. He also served in the United States Army. And as a veteran of the Army myself, I am proud to honor him. Carlos, for all those reasons and more, on behalf of the Latino Leaders Network, we present you with the Rising Star Award for your outstanding leadership and extraordinary commitment to our community. Thank you for always dreaming big. Congratulations.
Thank you all so much for being here. I want to start off by thanking Honorable Mickey Ibarra and the Latino Leaders Network for this honor. It's actually really special being here because the last LLN event I went to was in college, where Secretary Julian Castro was being honored. So it's kind of full circle moment, going from a college student to being an honoree. Even though I'm standing here alone, I did not get to this point on my own. In many ways, Pay Our Interns was never supposed to succeed. We had all the odds stacked against us. I quit my job to start this organization with $1,000, which I don't recommend. I didn't know anything about entrepreneurship, didn't come from generational wealth, started this organization in a time where Congress, one chamber was run by Republicans, the other was by Democrats, budgets were being cut left and right. And this whole mentality of pay your dues, and because I suffered in the past, so should you, were very much instilled in our cultures. And before I continue, I want to make note that people can pay their dues while getting a paycheck. It's not one or the other. Our tagline is, experience doesn't pay the bills, because it doesn't, right? Your landlord's not going to accept that as a form of payment. I tried. So even though we did not have money, what we had were people. People like Ingrid and Catherine from DMP Creative Strategies, who took us on as pro bono clients. People like John Michael Gonzalez from Tiber Creek Group, which were instrumental for the lobbying that helped create the $14 million initial fund for the Senate. People like Tony Tijerino, who's in the back of the room on a phone. I'm kidding. Who was the first supporter. I told him about my idea, and he not only encouraged me, but incubated us within the Hispanic Heritage Foundation and gave us office space. So I do want to just give you a shout out, Tony, for all the love and support. I'm standing here because I dared to reimagine a future where someone's background, what their parents make, does not dictate what kind of career they can have. Because that's what's been, the last 100+ years. And I'm glad that we're, slowly but surely changing that. I just gave a speech recently, and one of the attendees, it's Upward Bound program, for those that know, I also did Upward Bound in high school. He came up to me and he's like, you know what, I'm from Brownsville, Texas, and I just did the White House internship and I got paid. If it weren't, for being paid, I wouldn't have been able to do that. And those are the kind of the moments that remind me why I do this work. And I want to make this clear because I'm sure even some people think like, oh, getting internships paid, it's cute, it's nice, but it's so much more than that. This is a racial justice issue, this is an economic issue, this is a gender issue. 70% of interns are women, and we know that Latina women have the largest gender pay gap out of all groups. So think about that. If you're starting your salary from $0 an hour, how much does that impact a Latina 20, 30 years through their career? Right, so this issue transcends a lot of sectors, and that's why I do this work. As when Mickey mentioned my bio, I made sure to put dropout too, because I think often you see bios and it's like, I'm perfect, I got a gold star, and I don't think that's very healthy. We need to stop putting people in pedestals, and there's power in vulnerability, right? Getting to this point has not been easy. There were times where I couldn't pay my rent. And thankfully, I had people like my friend Nihal, who's here, that let me borrow money. It has not been easy, but I kept on pushing. And I think that's part of being a visionary leader. It's continuing even knowing when logically you need to stop, right? Like, there are many times I could have been like, you know what, let's pack it up. We should go home, but we didn't. And I'm so glad that myself and the co-founder Guillermo, who couldn't be here, we're finally seeing the fruits of our labor. To wrap this up, and particularly I'm addressing this to the interns and people that are just starting out their career. You read the news and it's hard not to feel disillusioned, like there's really not much hope, right? Like, what's the point of me investing in my career, so on and so forth, if there just doesn't seem to be a future? And I can tell you that, in these moments of crises are the times where there's opportunities to actually create systemic change. We saw that at the Supreme Court. They might have struck down race-based affirmative action, but now we have colleges pushing to end legacy, affirmative action. So for every problem or crisis, there is an opportunity. So I hope that the success and the change that Parenters has been able to do can inspire y'all to keep on fighting, keep on pushing. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. We're grateful for your leadership, and congratulations once again. And now for a conversation with our honoree and Chuck Rocha, founder of Solidarity Strategies. We are also delighted to welcome our moderator, Yvette Romero Coronado, assistant professor at the University of Utah and the very first intern of the Ibarra Strategy Group. We are thrilled to have you moderate this program today. The program is now all yours.
Again, my name is Yvette Romero Coronado. As you heard, I was the first intern at Latino Leaders Network, and you're hearing these words of like full circle, and there are cycles, because there I was, an intern, the very first intern at LLN, and then I received an invitation from Mickey to come back and moderate this conversation. And I think, one, I'm deeply honored by that and thankful that you extended that invitation to me, because it really shows the importance of intergenerational mentorship. And I think we have an opportunity today to hear from our honoree and our distinguished guest to see how they've done it. And to hear their stories that are so inspiring. I hope you took an opportunity to read their bios and understand a little more about where they came from. But really to ensure, and they work tirelessly to ensure that other people who are coming up the pipeline have access to resources, opportunities, and mentorship to live dignified and fulfilling lives. I think of this work as becoming a good elder and a good ancestor. So I hope that as you hear their stories today, that you will see pieces of yourself and your family in their stories, and be thinking about how it is that you're showing up for yourself, your ancestors, and for future generations. So let's get into it. So let's start with you, Carlos. So like some of us in the room, you're a first-generation college student at a predominantly white institution where people who looked, sounded, and felt like home were the workers.
Yes.
So can you share with us about your undergraduate experience at American University and advocating for custodians and cafeteria workers to unionize?
So first I want to acknowledge my parents and my little sister who are here. Studies have shown that the number one determinant of success are your parents. And I'm very grateful to have, in high school I did community college in the evening so I could graduate early and be able to, get out of the house sooner, right, because we were going through tough times. And my dad would drop me off every night and drive me from school to tennis and then community college from 7 to 10 p.m. So I do want to acknowledge that. Thank you. But moving 2,000 miles to AU was not easy, right? But two groups that really helped me were all the workers who are all Latina and African American, were the cooks. They very much felt like home. And two specific people, in particular, Caroline and Isaac, they were part of the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. At one point, my bosses, and I could always go to them and talk to them. But it's definitely, I think, hard. Basically, like, how do I say this? Being in a classroom where everyone went to schools that 100% of their classmates went to college, right? Like, they had all these connections, and it's hard not to think that, like, am I good enough? Having people kind of basically say, you only got here because you're Latino, so on and so forth. But what I think I learned is, we may have started, from different parts in a race, but we're at the same school with the same resources. We have the same career center. Like, it's going to be up to me, up to you to take on the advantage, like the resources that you have around you. And then in terms of the workers, I launched a campaign my junior college called Exploit It Won't, and it was to raise awareness for the abuses that are happening to them. And I'm really proud to say that by the end of that campaign, we were able to get a full ride scholarship for the children of workers.
Awesome.
So now they can go to American University for free.
You touched on this a little bit around the feeling that we get when we're in places where maybe we're the only Latinos, Latina, and Latinx folks in the room. And did you ever feel like, tell us more about like that, what we're calling the imposter syndrome. What was it like for you? And tell us more about that.
So, I felt that, I think, in school, when I was interning at the White House, Congress, and I think a couple of things. So, in a lot of our Latino cultures, people say, tienes que ser humilde. And yes, be humble, right? But sometimes we confuse humility with being submissive. And it basically, people want us to be meek and not to take up enough space, particularly for like Latinas and so on and so forth, for Black women. So it's taken a long way where it's like, you know what? I deserve to be here as much as anyone else. In fact, I worked twice as hard to get here. Some of you guys are Nepo babies, right? Like, I worked really hard to get here, and I deserve to be here. I just wanted to throw that joke in. But, so just like owning that power. And I can tell you now that now being in like Forbes and being in like spaces like Aspen, I meet some of these other really successful entrepreneurs, and some of them worked hard, and some of them like there's be an article, raise $50 million, but parents give $49 million. And look, there's nothing wrong, like if your parents help you out, awesome, but let's be honest here. Because then other Latinos will read this and be like, well, I just need to work twice as hard to get there, and you're not. And that's okay, but let's be realistic with what you come with. Imposter syndrome, weirdly enough, only happens to like POCs and working class people. And why is that? And I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. Do you have thoughts on that?
I got a lot of thoughts on that. I think that kudos should be given. What we say about Carlos is we say in passing because all of us are at a certain point of time to work hard and overcome obstacles. But what he's done is really incredible. I want to recognize Mickey and the Latino leaders for kind of calling that out because it don't happen every day. And it's not easy. When he talks about taking up space, we all know what that means. That means speaking up sometime in a space that's very white, a space that can be very punishing. I operate in the whitest space in America, which is political consulting. It is whiter than the C-suites in corporate America. 99.5% of all political and nonprofit consulting firms are majority owned by white women and white men. Less than 0.5% of firms are majority owned by black or brown or diverse companies. I live in that space, and I live in that space as a Mexican redneck with a cowboy hat who sounds like this when he speaks. So I understand taking up space. And I've made it my job to take up space, but it's also made me be able to sit back and reflect on imposter syndrome and what does that mean? And watching young brothers and young sisters be able to make space, watching people like Mickey make space for them, that's when you start seeing it all come into fruition. That gives you, young person who's sitting here, an idea of looking at a young state rep that looks like your community, or somebody who is a CEO of their own corporation who looks like me. Who's never been to college, who's got a criminal record, who's got a bad attitude and talks funny, who's made millions of dollars in a white space. And if my dumb ass can do it, you should be able to do it very easily. And that's the point of this whole conversation. What Carlos has done is hard, but it's not impossible. But he had to make a lot of sacrifices that we need to understand can be taking up space, can be figuring out what imposter syndrome is. But every year, more of us are going to be, America's going to not be a white dominant space. It's going to become multicultural. It's going to be going from black and brown and all the beautiful colors of the tapestry of who we are. My grandchildren, that's right, I'm old enough to have grandchildren, call me abuelo because they're the whitest little kids you've ever seen, but I want them to know that they are Mexican kids. So they make them call me abuelo. That's the one little thing that I'm doing with my grandkids. That story's told all over the country now, with little mixed babies all over the country. And they all need to know that they have a place to be in our power structure. Mickey's making space, other folks are making space, Tony in the back makes space, Christina in the back makes space. When we now get into positions of power, we make space. And what that's going to do is create more opportunity that you, young person sitting here, has to know how to take advantage of.
Yeah, and it makes me think about, I saw a quote, and I wish I could remember where I read this, but it said something about the feeling of imposter actually may come for some of us because those places were not designed for us. And so it's going to feel like you don't fit. And what I appreciate that both of you have touched on is like, what does it look like to enter that space, and how do you cultivate space and opportunity for other people to join in and to reimagine what leadership looks like, reimagine what the pathway looks like, right? It's like we don't have to take a vow of poverty, right? To do good work is let's not pass down the traumas, right? It's like, how do we change some of those things? So thank you for those comments. And Chuck, you're leading beautifully into our next question.
I did on purpose.
It was perfect. This is by design. We're communicating telepathically. You talked about your experience, some of the challenges you experienced, and in light of not pursuing college and still being in the place that you are, what helped you get to where you are today?
White people. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. When there wasn't many Christinas or Tinas or Tonys or Estuardos or Mickeys, I relied on lots of white people around me who gave me an opportunity. And I want to make sure I say that because I go after white people every day on Twitter if you follow me. But let's be clear. My mama is white. I love white people. I got 2 little white grandbabies, right? The point of that is, it sounds funny, is that you have to have folks that will help you. You may be the smartest, you may do all your books, you may have these great grades, but in my work, the best people don't get the jobs. It's the people who know somebody gets the jobs. So the people who help me is people that I made friends with, who then I was in the labor unions and then started my firm, actually hired me because they liked me and I was fair to them and I was respectful because I was raised by my granddaddy because my mama was 15 years old when I was born. My daddy left when I was 4. I was raised by an old white man in East Texas. I sound just like him. But he taught me to show up on time, be nice, and chew with my mouth closed. Those are 3 things that can be taught to anybody, is to show up on time, be nice, and have some manners. Everything else comes naturally. When you're in a room and you're talking to people, when you get to Capitol Hill and you're at that lowest position in the office, and then there's an intern that automatically comes in who is below you, how do you treat that intern? How do you, because you've started to make it now, right? This is the part of how I made it, is I came to town 12 years ago, had worked in the labor unions, hadn't been to college, because there were no black or brown senior political consulting firms. So I started going for Latino groups and saying, hey, you've got white consultants, you're a Latino nonprofit, I'm a Latino, my whole team are Latinos, maybe you could hire us. And then it went to other friends I'd met through the labor movement. A lot of my friends in the back of the room I keep calling out, started giving me some business. Because I didn't have, like he didn't have, a backup plan. I could not go a week without a paycheck. They were going to come get my truck again. They'd already done it once. So I needed to make sure that there was a way to get money. So CWA was one of my first clients. Yvette was another. And then I figured out how to make enough money to hire one person. Many people know Roberto Fierro, who came through CHCI and worked for me. And 12 and a half years later, those 3 people turned into 123 young black and brown people who have worked for me.
Yeah. You've highlighted and named many people in this room and other people who've been in your world that have supported you in getting to where you are today. So I'm curious to know, what would you say are key traits in people who influenced you and mentored you? Maybe starting with Carlos.
So I think a couple, and it's really interesting, like the names Chuck have mentioned, like Tony, Christina, have also helped me. Christina was one of our first donors. You were one of our first donors. I think we were one of our first people who gave $500.
I was.
Yes.
But I think one is generosity. It's also having an abundant mentality. Because I think oftentimes, because in some of these spaces that were not meant for us, there's only been a couple Latinos. And let's say you're the only Latino or Latina in your organization and they hire another one. There's 2 ways of looking at it. Like, I have competition, or hey, we're 2 of us, now let's go 3, 4, 5, right? So I think being able to collaborate and support each other, like we can all lift each other up. It's not a zero-sum game. So generosity, community. Third, not just mentors, but find people that will be your sponsor, right? That will put your name in for grants, for opportunities that will contribute, right? Like, because sometimes some mentors just pontificate and talk down to you. There are better ways of doing that. So I think those are some of the traits that, that have been really helpful for me. Jesse Barba, who's one of our board members, was here. Alejandra Castillo, so on and so forth, have really been great mentors.
Some of the best mentors that I've had, and I am 54 years old and have had lots of mentors still till today. So another lesson is you'll always be getting mentored by folks who know better stuff than you know. Yeah. Again, I never went to business school. I never went to college. I got a hot head and a big mouth. So I need lots of mentorship, especially when I work in politics. So the people that have mentored me have been people who have got those traits. Luis is here. Where's Luis? Luis is here, my business partner, immigrant from Mexico. Daisy, who's also my business partner, immigrant from El Salvador. They went to some great state schools, and they teach me things every day. It may be about an Excel spreadsheet, how to make a column go this way, but it's something I'm learning, right? The other things I'm learning is how to run a business. A lot of us who come from really poor families like me don't know anything about entrepreneurship or how to make money. And if we make money, we're taught, if we're true progressives like I am, that money is evil. When it's not evil. It's how and why most of us are doing the work that we're doing. We believe in the work, but we still have to make money to live, and really have to make money if your mama's going to have to live with you or need a place to stay, which most of us are in that position. So people who have mentored me the most have been people like Congressman Tony Cardenas, who's taught me a lot about business. Christina in the back of the room, other folks who have run Mickey, folks who have figured out what the tax system means. Thank God I talked to these people when I first started because I didn't know you had to pay taxes. Taxes always just came out of your paycheck. But now you got to save money to pay taxes. That sounds funny, but that's real talk that they don't teach us in school. They don't teach you that you have to save a portion of $1,000 you made to pay back the government. And if you got a couple people working for you, you got to pay on their Medicare and all their stuff. Like, this is where the mentorship really was invaluable for a young entrepreneur like me 12 years ago, because it's not anything I learned in a rural East Texas school where I was playing football and chasing girls and drinking probably too much beer. But that's just things that you should look for what you don't know and then go to somebody who will. I'll end with this. When I gave him that money, he was part of what I have agreed to do since the moment that I started the firm, which is everybody gets 30 minutes and a cup of coffee. If you're Latina or Latino, you call me and find me somehow, DM me on Twitter, email me, see me at an event, I will give every Latino I ever met 30 minutes and a cup of coffee. If you're from Texas, you get 45, but that's a side story. Carlos, we had met, and he told me about this thing, and I'm like, this is awesome. I don't have a lot of money. I didn't have a lot of money then. I got a lot of money now. Anyway, I didn't have a lot of money then.
I'm like, second round.
Make another
I
ask.
said, $500, let us know. And then he would show up at everything. Everything. This is his hustle. You can't teach hustle to people. He was at everything. And he would call me out if I didn't invite him to something. He'd be like, I see you having a Christmas party. I didn't get no invite. There'll probably be a lot of donors there. I'm like, this little brother, I love him, right? And this is how he became the success that he is.
Our time's wrapping up, but 3 little last quick things. The first is find people that will be honest with you. Because many of y'all are probably, you're valedictorians from, your high school and you get good grades and everything. And people around you be like, oh my God, you're doing so well. And that's great. But you're also going to be doing things that need to be changed. When someone is honest with you in a constructive way, they actually care about you. Take people's advice. Often I see people come in here and be like, I know everything. I don't need anyone behind me. Like, where you're walking, where you're standing on the footsteps of Mickey, Ibarra, and others. Like, they paved the way for us, and we need to honor and respect that. And then the last thing is find people that will help you push beyond your dreams, not just in terms of like goal strategies, but in terms of money. Early on, I was a server, and 2 foundations came to us and said, we will give you combined $800,000 if you merge with another organization. And we were not in alignment at all. And I almost took it because I'm like, we're struggling. And I remember calling Monica Ramirez, who couldn't be here, and she said, don't do it. She was like, I know that sounds like a lot of money, but I promise you there's so much more. And I said no, and it was rough the next 2-3 years. But she was right, and it worked out. So having people like that, I think, makes a difference.
Yeah, and if I could add something here too, is I think for me, when I look at a mentor or someone around me, is one, how human are they? Right? It's like, do they give themselves grace when things don't go right? Because things don't go according to plan all the time. It's like, how are they living their very human experience? Like, are they making mistakes, and how do they recover from that? How do they move in that? And those are the kind of things too that I really value in mentors, on top of all the pieces that you all have talked about here, is because it's hard and we're human. And I also want to say, all of us are carrying our own individual and family and community traumas, and those things show up, especially as we move into spaces that really don't understand or support healing from those experiences. So
I think that's really important. The piece that you bring up about trauma, in the way that we talk about things that happened to us when we were young or mistakes that we've made, has changed a lot with the new generation than when I grew up. I love this little white woman on the IG stories I see sometimes that says, I lived through before there was the internet, and that's me, right? I've gotten to see all the aspects of the evolution of the way that we consume information, from doing my homework with a World Book to now not being able to let go of that cell phone and being connected every minute around something, right? The biggest mistake I see lots of young folks do in the way that we put pressure on people through social media today, and young folks, is thinking you have to be perfect. Thinking you have to be as perfect as that Instagram model, physically, or as perfect as whoever's around you showing a good life, because we have or dealing with trauma that we dealt with as young people, whatever that could be. All of us who grew up poor have some kind of trauma in some way. That's always connected us. The thing that I have tried to prove to folks through my own imperfections, and I wrote a book about it called T.O. Bernie, is that lean into what makes you different. And to your point about staying within your values of not giving up that $800,000, be true to who that is. It may hurt a little bit, but don't be scared to talk about that trauma, because everybody, take it from a guy who's got a criminal record, who's the president of a corporation now, that as soon as I started talking about a mistake that I made when I was younger, to somebody about, would you still hire me because I do have a criminal record, it opened up a door where everybody had an opportunity to talk about mistakes they had made. Because the first thing you have to own is the mistake, and I did. I rebuilt my life after that mistake and got to do all the things that you're hearing about that was post that mistake. But then other people who've dealt with other traumas, other criminal infringements, other things with their family are like, we're all dealing with some of that we wish we hadn't have done. We did it, but now we have rebuilt our lives on that. Don't be scared of that, because everybody that you deal with, whether they admit it or not, are dealing with some of that, and that makes you very human to them.
Absolutely. Thank you. As we're wrapping up this part, and then we'll open it up to the Q&A, lots of interns in the room. So what advice would you give our attendees, specifically interns, who are just starting their career in Washington, D.C.? Carlos.
First is shoot your shot, right? You ask people, reach out on LinkedIn, hey, my name is so-and-so, I'm a student, I'm interning, I'm really passionate about this, I know you're doing this, can you get some coffee? Often the groups that least likely reach out to me on LinkedIn are people of color, Latino, so on and so forth. We need to reach out, right? Ask for help, get coffee, hustle, to your point, unfortunately, you can't teach initiative.
Nope.
There are a lot of resources out there, but not everything, and just accept that things are not just going to be handed to you, unfortunately, right? Unless you come from money or so on and so forth, you're going to have to fight for it. But I think it makes life better. Third, to your point about trauma and everything, it's took me years to realize, but for years I've just been so focused on my professional life and everything that I haven't really built myself spiritually or emotionally. And now I'm kind of okay, I need to also focus on that, because no one in their deathbed says, oh, I wish I worked more, I wish I had a promotion. You think about your family. I moved back home for 2 years. There's just so much more than your career. So even though you're starting out, and obviously you need to work really hard and everything, that's something that you should keep in mind, and find your community. Like Chuck said, it doesn't matter how talented or hardworking you are, you're only going to get so far by yourself. And the last thing is, live in the present. There's nothing more that I hate where people be like, oh, this is great, you just got into this school, what's next? When you're so focused on what's next, it's really hard to live and enjoy what's happening right now.
Yeah. Check.
I think I would just echo what Carlos said about find folks who can help you. Find the people, and it's not like it was even when Carlos was starting. There's more and more Latinos, Latinas who are running stuff. And so figuring out, that's the first commonality. And then find people that align with you around whatever the value set is you want to do. Maybe you want to work in education. Maybe environmental is your cause, right? Whether they're Latino or not, find that group of people, because then their network becomes your network. And I will go back to this to the day I die in the work that I work in. You only get hired by folks who know who you are and somebody validates you. And it's as wrong as the day is long, because many of you are talented who will never get a shot because you never met the right person. Networking is a real thing, but you don't have to network out of your comfort zone. And it's easier to network with people that you have commonality with. And just saying go to a network and go to a happy hour is really a big cop-out in my mind. As a guy that don't really get out much now after COVID because I ain't got to. But you can find your tribe. You can find your people. And what I have found is Luis and Daisy, my business partners, are 2 of those 122 people who have been through my firm and who've all been paid, who all are out doing things differently now, Capitol Hill, wherever. And now their network is my network, and that's how I have built the business, because they give back to me now, because they feel beholden to me because I wasn't not only their boss, but I was like their brother and their father, because we were really a really tight-knit small family. And those connections, those emotional connections, you can then bring in the trauma where we feel trauma, but then we feel safe in our family. All of that stuff is connected, but don't overthink it. It's not that hard. If you can hustle and you show up on time and you chew with your mouth closed, a lot of folks can teach you all the other stuff.